Welcome to Brave Healer Productions. It's time to experience what's possible. So, what if there's something you haven't learned yet that could change everything? Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions Publishing, where we are helping the world experience what's possible. And here today to help me with that mission are a couple of the amazing poet authors of one of our newest books. And I'm going to give you all a little peek of that book cover right now. 100 poems and possibilities for healing. This is volume 3. Oh my gosh, look at that sunrise, y'all. So shout out to Davide De Angelis for this beautiful cover art, and shout out to Kelly Kashula for our interior design. We're really taking these books to other levels with these beautiful people helping us. And look at all those beautiful authors that raise their hand to say yes to helping me bring poetry into the world. Well, I have 2 of them with me today in my Zoom room, and I cannot wait to share. Reverend Dr. Karen Shooter helps caregivers and professionals cultivate balance, inner peace, and resilience, empowering them to embrace life's joys while supporting others. Author of Resilient and Sustainable Caring. Karen, thank you for being here today. We have Parushka Moodley with us. She's a multifaceted writer, editor, and director, passionate about storytelling, healing through creativity, and turning dreams into art. Welcome, ladies. Thanks for being here. How you feeling?
Great. Thanks for having us.
I can't wait to share you guys with the world. Y'all poured your hearts and souls onto these pages. This book is just feeling so other level awesome to me. And I so appreciate both of you for being a part of it. When I started to think about the interview series, I was thinking of a moment in my past where it was like the day I had to start calling myself a poet. Like there was no denying it anymore. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But Karen, I'm going to start with you. Do you remember when you first started calling yourself a poet?
I don't think I've gotten to that point yet, actually.
Well, oh my gosh.
I know, right? I love poetry. I love writing it, and I have for when I was young, and then came back to it just a few years ago. And this is my second book with you, and I love it. So I'm starting to think of myself as a poet, and I am a writer. I know that, but yeah, poetry is a whole nother world, and I love it. And so thank you. Just starting to be able to identify myself as a poet.
We might have to, from here on out, today on out, Karen, I dub you poet. And, a lot of people in the interviews have said similar, like, okay, I know I'm a writer. I've been using that title for a while, but poet has been more recent. And thank you. I love being the reason you're starting to do that. That is cool. I think that we have a sense from what we're taught about what poetry should be. And part of the problem with these beautiful authors that have come into my world is up until now, they haven't shared it out into the world. So nobody even really knows you're a poet. It's like, whoa, we got to get these gifts into the world. So Parushka, I want to know the same thing from you. Like, do you remember when you started calling yourself a poet?
It's weird because I also I've been writing poetry since I was a child, but I never have considered myself a poet. A writer, yeah, but poet, it's just weird. It's like almost like poet is like Shakespeare or Emily Dickinson or and then it's just this, it's like a different level, even though you are writing poetry.
It's interesting to hear you say that. David was talking to us in the interview just earlier today, and he mentioned a few famous poets that we were all sort of forced to read in school. And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, okay. And you're making me, I had a moment just now when you said that. I'm like, okay, Mary Oliver, what was for me the place where I thought, oh, like I could write about nature. I could write about the birds. I could write about these things that just made sense to me and helped me connect to that bigger place. And that I read her poetry and that's how I felt. And I'm like, I think my poetry feels like that. Like, okay, I could be a poet too, and and her for me she was one of them for me.
Yeah. I think Sylvia Plath was that for me. Like,
Mhm.
she was just there, she just talked about stuff that was so taboo and so um like deeply emotional. And when in a time where like mental health is so was so discriminated against or stigmatized, it felt so liberating to read poetry from someone who was going through some things that I was going through.
Yeah, gosh, thank goodness I can see that changing very quickly in this last decade or so with mental health, right? That's a
Mm.
gift. I think our world is finally coming around to helping people a lot more. Yes, I love hearing your all's inspirations. So when I think about what I want other people to know about poetry, for me, I can kind of sum it up. It's like two words, no rules, y'all. No rules. And I want people to not get blocked by that. Maybe they had an experience in school like I did, where I was forced to memorize, I was forced to analyze, and none of that made sense to me. And it was kind of like a turn off, after that. But then there's also been other stories of our author poets who were very inspired by an awesome teacher, right? And the rules actually were part of what inspired them. There's so many different things about this and places that you all started your journeys. Prushka, what do you think is the most important thing you want people to know about poetry?
Um, I used to, well, as a child, poems always had to rhyme for me, which I actually think enhanced my vocabulary because you're always trying to find a word that makes sense but rhymes with the other word that you're using, which I kind of liked. But yeah, that it just is your thoughts out on a page, and there are no rules, like you said. Just if it flows with like a rhythm that you think is working, then it's working. And I think it's just really just getting out how you're feeling and processing things, and then putting them together again in a way that you think makes sense, I guess. If that made any sense.
Well, I mean, you're just talking about writing as an expressive tool, and it's like just move it out, y'all. Like use the process as a healing process. What if we just didn't call it anything? We don't have to call it poetry. We don't have to call it anything. Why not use that, as a healing tool? So for me, that's the priority. It's like I write to feng shui my soul. Like my healing is the priority. If a poem comes out, that's kind of fun these days. Like, oh, maybe I'm going to turn that into something. But that's what I heard when you were talking about that. Yeah. Okay, Karen, for you, what do you want people to know about poetry?
Oh, that poetry is it's really a gift to ourselves. Poetry helps us connect with others, with the world around us, but especially with ourselves. And that we can write poetry. Most of my poetry has not been read or heard by another person. So, yeah, if you want to get technical and maybe there's some rules, but when you're just doing it for yourself, there's not necessarily rules. It's just taking words and using those words to help understand um, how to see yourself in the world and others.
And then just because we were talking about poets that inspire us, did you have any, Karen, that you thought of when we were saying that?
Oh yeah, I've got all kinds of them. And it's funny because actually the one that, Mary Oliver, because you mentioned Mary Oliver and Emily Dickinson and Robert Frost, but the one that just kind of jumped out at me is Dr. Seuss, right? Because it's playful and delightful and fun, and it's just using that creative part of the brain to give us images of things that we would not normally think of in those ways.
Oh my gosh, Dr. Seuss. My big joke of all time about poetry is that once in a while a poem comes out in lines of four, multiple stanzas, and it sounds like 'twas the night before Christmas and all through that, right? And it's like, wait a minute, what am I writing here? Like, why is that in my head? But that's it. That's what you're making me think of with Dr. Seuss, right? It's just, what is that?
Yeah, and actually one of my poems ended up being like a Dr. Seuss poem. It's got very heavy meaning, but it's very playful, and I love it when people can do that. They can take something very deep and meaningful, but then turn it also into something kind of playful and fun.
I love that so much. I had the very big gift of being with my poet family this past weekend at an in-person event, and one of our collaborative poets in this volume, you guys will meet him on the interviews. He goes by the name 13. He got up last, and there were some pretty deep poems on Saturday, but he gets up there and he was talking to us about this haiku poem thing that he was working on when he was, I think, at the airport. And he wrote, how a haiku is 3 lines, 5, 7, 5, right? Syllables. And I think it's a total of 17 syllables. I think that 17 was part of it. Anyway, he figured out how to write 17 stanzas of haikus. So he gets up there and he's like, I lost my earphones at the airport, and everybody just bursts out laughing because it was not, it was just like about losing his headphones at the airport, and it's in this haiku, and I just loved it. I'm like, oh my gosh, that just lightened up the entire room. Yeah, we can have fun with poetry. You know, you're making me think of that. So, okay, gals. I think one of the biggest gifts in my life is to be in these rooms listening to the spoken word and then actually trying it myself and getting to the point where I was brave enough to stand at the microphone and read, at first sometimes shaking. And now I can do it a little bit easier than that, although I still have nerves. But there was a gift I was getting when I was listening, because you all have written these beautiful poems in the book. And in a minute here, we're going to hear each of you read one. And when you put the vibration of your voice to your beautiful words, it's like you're making that come alive. It's not like you're making it come alive, and you're giving us the gift of that experience of feeling. And I get very excited about listening to you all read. So, Karen, you're going to be up first for this, and I'm going to just get you set up here. And I just can't wait for you all to really feel these words. Okay, so Karen, we are ready for you.
Okay, so my chapter is chapter 15. It's called Endless Dots, Create New Perceptions and Possibilities. And what the poem I'm going to read is the title poem. It's called Endless Dots. What I really looked at in this poetry was the challenge of identity changes and big challenge, changes in life that push us to see ourselves differently, which can be really hard, especially when social pressures or there are damaging false societal values that really make it hard for us to value ourselves with these changes. so endless dots. Decades move on with life closely defined, constrained with a period by I am. One sentence for a crowded life, but who can use a single dot? With a world so full of circles that wind beyond this endless space of time, move on and on past here and now to push forward a brand new plot. Another dot is added past the line, opens wide more windows and doors, giving rise to unexpected floors, adding hope beyond one lone spot. Each step, each breath, to somehow finally find a reason to offer far more. To the I am who walks my shoes, yet sight strains to see past a small jot. Can it be, if I am truly genuine, that this very full life of mine should really be seen as defined by rows and rows of endless dots? And thank you for listening to that poem of mine.
I love it. Thank you, Karen. All right, I'm going to bring everybody back up to the stage here, so to speak, so that yes, now we can give Karen some snaps and waves and claps. I kept having visuals of the dots as you were reading, and then you're, of course, making me think of ellipses. And I was even starting to think of like the semicolon dot and like all of these little visuals of dots coming into my mind. And again, such a gift to hear you read. So thank you, Karen, for that. I know some of the poets who have read in this interview series. Well, I know because they told me then, it's like, that's the first time I've ever read something out loud. You know, I'm like, what? Just know what a gift you are when you do that. So Parushka, let's get you set up for yours. One moment. Okay, we are ready for you.
Okay, cool. My chapter is chapter 17. It's called How the Light Gets In, Fragments of Love, Loss, and Resurrection. And I'm going to be reading the second poem, which is called The Drowning Hour. And it was written at a very dark time in my life. And I was very much in love with somebody I shouldn't have been in love with, which is a universal experience, possibly. And it led me down a really dark path. So it's quite a dark poem. But anyway, okay, so she sat still, deep in her reverie, the world around her blurring. She sensed the laughter, the chatter, she smelled the alcohol, the cigarette smoke. But tears pressed at the edge of her sanity, the pain all-encompassing. It began in the pit of her belly, but felt like the seat of her soul. It burned. It ate at her from the inside, acid devouring delicate flesh. It rose into her chest, her heart pounding, each beat sharper than the last. It seeped into her veins, a hot, burning liquid that made her want to rip her skin open so the agony might dissipate. Every cell screamed for her to run, run and hide, run and jump, run and die. But the sight of him held her there paralyzed in the palm of his hand as he brushed her away without a second thought. She felt the splintering in her heart, thin cracks like shards of glass etching his name into the core of her humanity. A giggle, a smile, a hand on her shoulder. She shuddered back into the room, surrounded by people yet utterly alone. Their eyes met momentarily. Nothing. Blank space. Hazel voids of emptiness. She tipped her head back, draining her glass, drowning the pain of being in love with him. Thank you for listening to my poem.
Thank you so much, Parushka. Let's bring you guys back up here and talk about that for a moment. Okay, I'm going to give you some snaps and claps and waves. I think you're right. I think it's a universal experience, and the gift I think we give when we allow ourselves to share something, you know, you called it dark, but I just call it real. And that helps us not feel alone. And so that was your gift today. It's like, yeah, I'm going to go there because that was real for me. And then it's real for other people too. And I often say, I'm constantly writing pretty much notes to myself when I am sharing things out into the world, these stories and these poems. It's like, these are all reminders for myself, but that's kind of how I know that somebody else will be helped by them. So beautiful. Thank you. And to both of you today, thank you so much for what you do in the world. Thank you for being here today to share with everybody. I want our listeners to know that this is way more than a book. This is a very generous community, and I have both Karen and Perushka hooked up with their websites down below. Please go click and explore because they are up to a lot of awesome things in the world, and we want you to connect with our authors, with our poets. They're there to give you some support, answer a question, dive into what they have to offer. We also hope that you hop over to Amazon and grab your copy of this beautiful book, 100 Poems and Possibilities for Healing. This is volume 3. And a portion of royalties from this book launch in our first quarter are going to be given back to my nonprofit partner, the InkWell, and founder, Miss Cayenne Thomas, who is also a beautiful poet in this book. You guys, this purchase of the poetry book has a bigger ripple because we're going to give back to her. She serves youth in our area with therapeutic writing programs, healing the world one journal and pen at a time. So you can see where our missions come together and mesh so beautifully. So please grab your copy of the book. And hey, maybe you're a poet and you're excited hearing these ladies share their poetry today. You want to think about sharing yours in one of our next collaborations, come visit bravehealer.com. And lastly, today, everyone, remember your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. So it is time to be brave. See you next time, everyone.